On March 24, 2015, a Germanwings Airbus, a 320-211 plane, took off from Barcelona, heading for Dusseldorf. Everything appeared normal as the aircraft was in contact with the Marseille en route control center. At 9:30 a.m., the Air Traffic Control, ATC, cleared the captain for the flight. However, shortly after, the aircraft began descending rapidly. ATC attempted to contact the pilot, but there was no response. What could have happened to cause the...
We have breaking news. Deadly plane crash in the French Alps.
The flight which returned was the one that crashed.
At 9:30 a.m., everything was fine. But just a few minutes later, ATC noticed that the plane had descended to 300 feet, when it should have been at 32,000 feet. When attempts to communicate with the pilot failed, ATC tried different radio frequencies from 9:34 to 9:39 a.m., making multiple attempts to establish contact. Even the French air defense system was contacted, and another aircraft tried to establish communication, but to no avail. By 9:41 a.m., the plane crashed into the Alps, where no road network existed. Emergency crews had to be flown in by helicopter. Unfortunately, no one on board survived. There were 144 passengers, 4 cabin crew members, a captain, and a co-pilot. A week after the crash, the plane's cockpit voice recorder and flight recorders were recovered, revealing the entire story. At 9:30 a.m., the captain exited the cockpit to go to the bathroom. At 9:34 a.m., when the captain returned and requested the co-pilot to open the door, there was no response. After the 9/11's attacks in 2001, a security mechanism was installed on airplanes to prevent hijackings. This system was simple. The cockpit door was secured and could only be unlocked from the inside. If a pilot was outside, they had to request access via intercom, and the door would be unlocked. Additionally, there were emergency codes that could be used to trigger the door to open after 30 seconds. But there was a risk that terrorists might use these emergency codes to gain access to the cockpit. Therefore, an additional safety mechanism allowed the pilot inside the cockpit to lock the door entirely, making it impossible to open, even with the emergency codes. When the captain received no response, he realized that the co-pilot had hijacked the plane. Investigators later discovered from the cockpit recordings that the captain was banging on the door, trying to break it down, but all attempts were in vain, as the door was designed to prevent a hijacker from gaining access. But why did the co-pilot hijack the plane? To understand this, we need to look into the life of 27-year-old co-pilot Andreas Lubitz. From a young age, he was passionate about flying, with posters of Airbus, Boeing, and Lufthansa on his bedroom walls. He became an expert glider pilot at a young age. After graduating from school, he joined Lufthansa's flight academy, but within a few months, problems began to arise. Andreas was diagnosed with depression and was treated with antidepressants. He spent several months under the care of a psychiatrist, and after his treatment, he was declared fit to fly again, with his student pilot's license restored. He continued his training, but then another problem arose. Andreas moved to Lufthansa's flight school in Arizona, where he had to fill out a Federal Aviation Administration, FAA form. On this form, he falsely stated that he had never suffered from any mental disorders. Although his lie was discovered, the FAA decided to give him a second chance instead of ending his career. In 2013, he joined Germanwings, a low-budget airline operated by Lufthansa. However, his depression returned a year later, this time more severe, as he began experiencing episodes where he believed he was going blind. He consulted several doctors and neurologists, but none of their tests revealed any problems. His condition worsened, and he began seeing stars, halos, and flashes of light.
कभी-कभी उसे स्टार्स, हेलोज और लाइट के फ्लैशेस दिखने लगते थे, तो कभी वो उड़ते हुए इंसेक्ट्स के बारे में।
Doctors advised him to seek psychiatric care, but he didn't follow through. In January 2015, Andreas visited his psychiatrist again, who prescribed him heavy antidepressants. It became clear that something was wrong, but Andreas refused to acknowledge it. Investigations revealed that just 4 days before the crash, Andreas had been researching the locking mechanism of the Airbus A320 cockpit door. During the flight from Dusseldorf to Barcelona, he tested the plane's descent settings and the locking mechanism. On the return flight from Barcelona to Dusseldorf, convinced that his plan was foolproof, Andreas hijacked the plane, leading to the tragic crash. This incident raised the question of how Germanwings could overlook such a serious mental health issue in one of its pilots. At the time, health screenings and annual checkups for pilots were mainly focused on physical health. There was also an honor system in place, expecting pilots to self-evaluate their health and report any issues. Despite multiple warnings from doctors, Andreas never informed his company about his condition. Another controversy arose around the doctors who treated Andreas. Even though they were aware of his mental state, they didn't inform the airline. This was because of doctor-patient confidentiality, which dictates that conversations between a doctor and patient remain private. Some argue that doctors should have informed the airline, but it wasn't that simple. Breaking confidentiality could have jeopardized their reputations, and doctors would need to be 100% sure that Andreas was a safety risk. However, predicting that someone with depression would one day hijack a plane is impossible for any doctor, which is why none of them informed the airline. Another factor was Germany's strong privacy and data protection culture, which made doctors reluctant to breach confidentiality. After the crash, significant changes were made in the airline industry worldwide. The European Aviation Safety Agency introduced new safety regulations, including stricter psychological screening for pilots. Many airlines adopted policies requiring at least 2 people to be present in the cockpit at all times. However, Lufthansa has recently removed this policy. Following the crash, Lufthansa paid 660,000 euros in compensation to the families of the victims, with an additional 888,000 euros to the close relatives of the victims. But no amount of money could compensate for the family's loss. The crash was also devastating for Andreas's family, who to this day insist that their son did not deliberately crash the plane. They believe it's possible that Andreas lost consciousness in the cockpit. However, all official investigations dispute this theory. We hope you learned something new from this video. If you enjoyed it, please like the video. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe before you go.